When a young gang leader thinks he's above the law and cuts off a single mother, terrifying her 6-year-old child in broad daylight, what happens next? That arrogant man walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom believing his name, Mason, and the power of his grandfather will shield him from any consequences. But when Judge Caprio forces his family to choose between loyalty and justice, what happens next becomes the most talked about moment in Providence courtroom history. The defendant stands there with a smirk, arrogantly telling Judge Caprio, "My grandfather runs this city. You can't touch me, old man." The entire courtroom falls dead silent, but no one knows that City Councilman Thomas Mason is sitting in the back row, dressed in plain clothes, quietly watching his grandson destroy every value he spent 30 years building. And the decision he's about to make will leave many people choked up, restore faith in justice, and prove that some people put principles above blood. Before we dive into this incredible story, less than 5% of you watching have actually subscribed to the channel. If you believe in real justice and holding the powerful accountable, hit that subscribe button right now. On a cold December morning at the Providence Municipal Court, Judge Frank Caprio is preparing to enter what seems like a routine traffic violation hearing, but his nearly 40 years of experience on the bench tell him this case is unlike any before. The victim is Maria Lopez, 34, a nurse at Rhode Island Hospital and a single mother to a 6-year-old girl who became the center of community sympathy after the incident 3 days earlier. The defendant is Tyrell "Ty" Mason, 23, a gang leader of the Southside Reapers and the grandson of Providence City Councilman Thomas Mason, a connection that has fueled public outrage over suspected privilege and arrogance. According to the records, that morning as Maria was driving her daughter to school on Elmwood Avenue, the Reapers motorcycle pack led by Tyrell sped through at high speed and nearly collided with her SUV. When Maria signaled to change lanes, Tyrell stopped in the middle of the street, got off his bike, slammed his fist on her hood, and yelled, "You know this is Reapers territory. If you don't like it, don't drive here," before walking away, leaving the mother and child terrified and the vehicle heavily dented. 3 separate witnesses confirmed hearing Tyrell brag that his family would take care of it before speeding off, defying the whole neighborhood. Maria's hand slipped, slamming into the steering wheel. Her daughter suffered psychological shock and had to be checked at Rhode Island Hospital. Security camera footage from a nearby store captured the entire incident, and the video spread quickly on local news, causing outrage across Providence and demands for justice to be served. So this morning all eyes are on the courtroom, where people are waiting to see if the truth is strong enough to bring a privileged offender back down to earth. The courtroom doors open, and Tyrell "Ty" Mason strides in like it's his personal stage, not the city courthouse. He's wearing a thick black leather jacket with the Southside Reapers logo on the back, a beanie pulled low over half his forehead, and a heavy silver chain around his neck that jingles with every step. Tyrell's walk is full of smugness, shoulders swaying, hands shoved deep in his pockets, a half sneer, half amused grin on his face, as if he's heading to a street hangout rather than facing charges for endangering a mother and child. When he reaches the defendant's bench, Tyrell flops down into the wooden chair, slouches back, spreads his legs defiantly, and folds his arms across his chest, signaling that nothing here deserves his seriousness. His eyes scan the room, lingering for a few seconds on the spectators, as if telling them they have no right to judge him. When Judge Caprio calls his name, Tyrell responds in a drawn-out, mocking tone, "Yeah, I'm here, Your Honor." No one misses the disrespect in how he says "Your Honor," and a few spectators whisper in annoyance. Caprio observes but doesn't react. His deep, calm eyes just glance at the defendant before he looks down at the case file. When asked about the morning of the incident, Tyrell immediately denies responsibility, shrugging like it's trivial. "I didn't do anything." She panicked and lost control herself. Elmwood Avenue is busy every morning. Who can avoid everything? He even turns to glance at Maria with a mocking look, as if her and her daughter's fear is a joke. Maria sits huddled in her seat, hands clasped so tightly they're white, but she tries to stay composed. The contrast between the two people in court is stark. On one side, a small woman trying to protect her daughter who hasn't fully processed the fear she experienced. On the other, a young gang leader, arrogant and carefree, treating the trial like entertainment. When Caprio asks about Tyrell's reaction after slamming Maria's hood, Tyrell waves it off like swatting a fly. "I just stopped to talk. Nothing serious, don't blow it out of proportion." He tilts his head, smirks, and mutters just loud enough for the room to hear, "These things get handled anyway, always do." Those 2 words, "get handled," cause a stir in the courtroom. People exchange angry glances, some shaking their heads in disgust. Everyone knows what Tyrell is implying and who he's relying on. A woman near Maria whispers, "That's the attitude of someone used to privilege." A man behind her murmurs, Wonder if he'll get away with it this time. Caprio sees all these reactions without looking up. He just sits there, turning pages, reviewing photos and police notes. No angry expression, no sign of bias, just silence, observation, and mentally placing every detail in its right place. His demeanor gradually quiets the room, as if everyone understands this isn't a hearing someone can easily manipulate or turn into a power display. Those moments of silence only make Tyrell more uncomfortable. He shifts in his seat, crosses his arms tighter, trying to hide the unease starting to show. But no matter how hard he tries to act cool, his arrogance and contempt are etched in the eyes of everyone present, and especially in the eyes of the experienced judge behind the bench, who has never overlooked any sign of hubris. Just as the tension in the room reaches a breaking point, waiting for the slightest trigger to explode, Judge Caprio looks up, sets the file down in front of him, and stares directly at Tyrell with a sharp but characteristically calm gaze. His voice is low and deliberate, as if weighing every word. "All right, Tyrell Mason, tell me again exactly what happened on Elmwood Avenue that morning." Tyrell shrugs, flashing a half-contemptuous, half-defiant smile. "I already told you, Your Honor. She lost control. I was just riding normally when she freaked out. I didn't do anything." Caprio tilts his head, eyes locked on the defendant's face. "You call stopping in the middle of the road, slamming someone's hood and yelling at them not doing anything?" Tyrell smirks. "Well, everyone gets stressed driving, right? It's no big deal, blowing it way out of proportion." A few spectators in the back let out indignant sighs, but Caprio remains composed, his hand lightly touching the edge of the bench as if keeping the room from slipping out of control. "She wasn't alone," Caprio says, his voice lowering slightly. "There was a 6-year-old child in the car." That statement cuts through Tyrell's arrogance like a knife. He flinches slightly, then quickly tries to regain his careless demeanor. "I didn't touch the kid," he snaps, more irritated than before. "If it cried, that's its problem, not mine." The whole courtroom stirs, murmurs spreading like a wave. Caprio places both hands on the bench, leaning forward slightly. "But your reckless actions terrified both mother and child. Don't you think that little girl deserves to feel safe on her way to school?" The question makes Tyrell's face harden. He lets out a hollow, defiant laugh. "I'm not responsible for anyone on that road. Drivers look out for themselves." Caprio takes a slow breath, his experienced eyes flashing with disappointment mixed with resolve. "Elmwood Avenue," he says slowly, "is a public road. It belongs to everyone." Before Caprio can finish, Tyrell interrupts, his voice loud and abrasive, startling many. "That road doesn't belong to you." A heavy silence immediately crashes down on the room. Maria clutches her hands tighter. The spectators freeze. Even the officer by the door glances at Tyrell in disbelief. No one expected such blatant disrespect in front of a judge. Caprio remains still for a few seconds, as if letting the room fully absorb the weight of those words. Then he gently straightens up, his voice not loud but clear enough for all to hear. "What did you just say, Tyrell Mason?" Tyrell swallows hard but tries to backpedal, his voice weakening a bit. "I mean, you don't understand how the streets work. That's our territory. People who come in need to know their place." "Your territory?" Caprio repeats, each word dropping coldly. "You think a street gang has the right to make laws on the roads of Providence?" Tyrell snaps back irritably. "That's just how it is. You don't know what life is like out there." Caprio leans back, closing his eyes briefly as if he's heard this from too many lost young people. When he opens them, his voice hardens. "I assure you, Tyrell, that in this city no one, no gang, no family, no lineage is allowed to place themselves above the law." Tyrell falls silent, his hands starting to clench on his lap, but the defiance in his eyes lingers. Caprio leans in, his voice slow and sharp like a well-honed blade. "You say you just stopped to talk. You say you didn't do anything. You say this is all a misunderstanding." He pauses long enough for every eye in the room to turn to him. "So let's see what really happened." Caprio turns to the clerk and nods slightly. "Play the video evidence." The entire courtroom falls completely silent, the air thickening as all eyes turn to the large screen lighting up in front of the bench. As the light stabilizes, video 1 immediately appears, starting with footage from a convenience store camera at the corner of Elmwood Avenue. The wide angle shows the busy morning traffic flowing steadily until the Southside Reaper's motorcycle pack suddenly roars into frame like a pack of wild animals tearing down the road. Leading the way is Tyrell, easily identifiable by the black leather jacket with the Reaper's logo on the back. He accelerates, weaves past 2 cars ahead, then suddenly swerves close to Maria's SUV in a move that looks nothing like normal avoidance but deliberate intimidation. The SUV lurches violently and many in the courtroom instinctively lean forward, gasping as they watch Maria struggle to keep control in the chaos. As Tyrell cuts in front of her, he even turns his head and raises a hand in a provocative gesture. An older woman in the audience covers her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God," while a man beside her shakes his head, face frozen in disbelief at what he's seeing. Tyrrell, at the defendant's bench, starts fidgeting, legs shifting, hands clenching as his smugness fades bit by bit with the undeniable images playing publicly. Video 1 ends and the courtroom air is thick with quiet outrage spreading through the rows, but Caprio says nothing, just nods to play video 2. The screen shifts a closer angle from another roadside camera. This time, the moment the SUV loses control is clearer. As Tyrrell cuts in, Maria jerks the wheel to avoid collision, tires skidding, the vehicle spinning slightly before veering to the curb and slamming Maria into the steering wheel. In that instant, a little girl's voice pierces through, "Mommy, mommy," small but cutting straight through the courtroom like a thin blade, making many shudder. The car stops abruptly. Maria slumps over the wheel in pain, her hands trembling as she tries to shield her child. The child's screams continue for a few more seconds before a passerby runs over to open the door and help. A woman in the courtroom wipes away tears while a young couple behind her bow their heads slightly, unable to bear the image of a child so terrified. At the defendant's bench, Tyrrell bites his lip, face flushing, eyes blinking faster than normal. He leans forward, trying to maintain his cool, but his tense shoulders betray him. The once confident gang leader who strutted into court is visibly cracking. Caprio watches Tyrrell for a long moment before nodding to play video 3. Footage from a parking lot behind an apartment complex appears. Grainier than the first two, but the audio is surprisingly clear. Tyrrell is in frame, leaning against his motorcycle, talking to 2 other Reapers members. His voice comes through the mic. "Reapers own Elmwood. Anyone who drives on our road deals with it. Don't like it, their problem." One of the others laughs loudly and Tyrrell continues with arrogance that makes the courtroom hold its breath. "No need to worry anyway. My family handles everything. Sue if you want." Those words ring out in the courtroom like a slap to justice. A "good Lord" escapes from the back row and others whisper in outrage, no longer hiding their anger. Maria bows her head, hands clasped tightly but not crying. Her endurance only makes everyone feel more sympathy. When video 3 ends, the room falls into total silence. No one moves, no one speaks. All eyes are on Tyrrell, who has now lost every trace of his initial defiance. He darts his eyes around, hands trembling slightly despite trying to hide it. Sweat beads on his forehead, and for the first time since arriving, Tyrrell no longer dares to hold his head high. Caprio sits quietly for a few more seconds before speaking, his voice low and firm, like nailing down a verdict. What we just watched was not an accident. It was intentional, seriously endangering an innocent mother and child. There is no misunderstanding here, no exaggeration, and certainly no reason for arrogance. He gently pushes the file forward. The video clearly shows you deliberately intimidated, threatened, and endangered them. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was a choice. And that choice nearly put 2 lives in grave danger. Tyrrell says nothing, just swallows hard, avoiding eye contact, his mood visibly shifting. The carefree attitude is gone, replaced by confusion, even fear, a reaction no one in the room thought they'd see from him until now. Caprio doesn't need to say more because the change on Tyrrell's face speaks for itself. For the first time, he's starting to realize just how serious this is. The courtroom is still steeped in heavy silence after the video's end when Caprio suddenly looks up, his deep, resolute eyes fixed directly on Tyrrell. He lightly taps his fingers on the wooden bench, producing a dry echo in the quiet room, then asks in a low voice sharp as a cold blade, "Who made you think you're above the law, Tyrell Mason?" The question isn't just an accusation, it's a hammer blow to the one weakness Tyrell has always hidden. He startles, looking left, right, then down, unconsciously twisting the fabric of his pants, as if searching for an excuse but finding none. In that moment, the large wooden door at the back of the courtroom gently opens, the hinges creaking clearly in the thick atmosphere. Every eye in the room, from the audience, witnesses, Maria, even Tyrell, snaps toward the door. A tall man with graying hair, dressed in a neat gray suit, steps in. It's Thomas Mason, Providence City Councilman, a figure of considerable influence and power in the area. But more importantly, he's Tyrell Mason's grandfather. His appearance sucks the sound out of the room in an instant. No one speaks, no one breathes heavily. Everyone knows Thomas's presence could change everything. Tyrell whips around, eyes wide in disbelief. He jumps up from his chair, stepping back half a pace as if seeing the one thing he feared most but never thought would happen. His mouth moves. "Grandpa?" His voice trembles, shocking many. The arrogance and pride from before vanish, completely replaced by raw fear. Thomas Mason doesn't look at Tyrell right away. He walks slowly toward the spectator benches, placing a hand on the back of a chair as if steadying himself. His face looks weary, eyes heavy, not from age but from the disappointment he's about to confront. Caprio recognizes this. He nods slightly, signaling Thomas to approach. Thomas takes a deep breath and steps to the center of the courtroom. He turns to face Caprio, then looks at Tyrell, a gaze not angry or hateful, but but heartbreakingly pained. His voice is low and hoarse. "Your Honor, first, may I say a few words?" Caprio nods. Thomas faces the packed courtroom and speaks, each word heavy as lead. "I'm here not to defend my grandson, not to ask for leniency, and certainly not to hide anything." Many spectators nod slightly, some even whispering approval. Thomas continues, his voice clearer though still trembling a bit. "I've spent my life serving Providence, and I've always believed justice is the foundation of a city's existence. But today, after watching those videos," he inhales sharply through his nose to stay composed, "I realize I've failed in my own family." Tyrell bows his head, shoulders shaking. He doesn't dare look at his grandfather. Thomas turns to Caprio. "I tried to teach my grandson about responsibility, respect, and the limits everyone must know, but clearly I didn't do enough. My grandson's arrogance, the way he thinks he can do anything without consequences, that's our fault, the adults in the family." Maria, sitting behind, lightly touches her chest, surprised by Thomas's sincerity. The courtroom is completely silent, only the faint hum of the air conditioning. Thomas straightens up, eyes resolute. "So I'm standing here to say clearly, please handle this case strictly according to the law. No exceptions, no privileges, no special treatment for the Masons, the Reapers, or anyone else." He pauses for a few seconds, then says the words that freeze the room. "No one stands above justice, not even my grandson." That declaration rings out like a church bell, leaving everyone speechless. Spectators look at each other, some nodding in respect, others sighing in relief that the truth has finally come from the very person rumors have swirled around for so long. Tyrell stands frozen, head bowed, hands clenched white. For the first time since entering the court, he has nothing to say, no excuses, no defiant expression. Only shame wells up, forcing his head lower. Caprio watches the entire scene, his face unchanged but his eyes softening slightly, as if he understands the weight of this moment. The courtroom remains dead silent, not a single unnecessary sound. Tyrell Mason, the gang leader who entered full of arrogance, is now just a young man standing with his head bowed in silence, feeling for the first time in his life the full weight of the truth that no one is above the law. In that quiet moment, as the atmosphere still lingered with the aftershock of Thomas Mason's declaration, Judge Caprio remained silent for a few more seconds before gently placing both hands on the bench, as if gathering the full weight of the case before delivering his final decision. He looked straight at Tyrell with no trace of anger or harshness left, only the pure sternness of a man who had seen too many wayward fates in his years as a judge. "Tyrell Mason," he began, his voice slow and steady, "what you did was not just a thoughtless act, it was a disregard for the lives of others. You chose to drive as if the entire road belonged to you alone, and you deliberately forced a mother taking her child to school to face danger she should never have had to endure." A few people nodded. Tyrell kept his head down, his hands clasped together so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Caprio continued, "In this society, civic responsibility isn't just about following the law, it's about understanding that every action we take can affect others. And that responsibility is even greater when you're someone with influence, a leader of a group you proudly call the Reapers." His voice dropped lower, sharp as a knife's edge. "But you use that position to spread fear on roads that should be safe for everyone, especially a 6-year-old child." The courtroom air grew heavy again. Caprio glanced at Thomas, then scanned the audience seats as if to emphasize what he was about to say. "Privilege is never a license to infringe on others. Just because you're the grandson of a city council member doesn't give you the right to threaten, endanger, or loudly proclaim that the Reapers own Elmwood. No one owns Elmwood Avenue. No one owns any road in this city. The roads belong to the people, people like Maria and her daughter." Caprio turned back to Tyrell. "And today you must be held accountable for what you've done." He opened the case file, flipped to the page with the proposed penalty, but instead of reading it immediately, he spoke in a low, clear voice that commanded everyone's attention. "The court rules as follows." The courtroom fell silent. First, a $400 fine for dangerous driving and disturbing the peace on the roads. Tyrell nodded slightly but said nothing. Second, suspension of your driver's license for 60 days. During that time you are not permitted to operate any vehicle within the city of Providence. A man in the back row let out a soft hum of approval. Third, you must fully compensate Maria Lopez for all damages to her vehicle, including repair costs and safety inspection fees. Caprio looked at Maria, his face softening for a brief moment before returning to sternness. Fourth, you must complete 50 hours of community service at a facility designated by the court. Tyrell swallowed hard, as if feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Fifth, you are required to attend the Traffic Responsibility Program, where you will learn about driver responsibility, the consequences of reckless behavior, and respect for other road users. A few people in the audience smiled with satisfaction. Caprio did not stop. He continued, emphasizing each word. "And finally, you will meet Maria Lopez to apologize directly. Not an apology just to fulfill legal procedure, but one so you truly understand the fear she and her daughter endured because of your actions. Tyrell looked up for the first time in over 10 minutes, his eyes red but no longer defiant. All that remained was the silence of someone who had finally understood what they had caused. Caprio closed the file, lightly gripped the gavel, and delivered his final words in a decisive yet humane tone. Justice doesn't tear anyone down. Justice lifts them up so they learn to live rightly. Those words echoed like a complete closure, leaving the entire courtroom silent, no one daring to breathe heavily, as if they had just been reminded of something fundamental that had long been forgotten. As the echoes of the verdict still hadn't fully faded, Caprio gently signaled, and Maria stood up, her hands clasped together but her voice remarkably calm, as if she had rehearsed every word to avoid trembling in this crucial moment. "Your Honor," she began, looking straight ahead without avoiding Tyrell, "I didn't come here today with hatred. I don't want anyone to be destroyed or pay too heavy a price. I just want my daughter to be safe." Soft whispers rose from the spectator seats, and Maria continued, her voice soft but resolute. "That day I was terrified. I thought I would lose control, that the car would flip, that my daughter would be hurt. I can't forget her screaming cry when the car was forced onto the curb. What haunts me isn't the dent in the hood, it's the fear in her eyes. I just hope she slightly tilted her head toward Tyrell, understands that." Maria took a deep breath, gathering the last of her courage. "I hope he understands the fear a mother has to go through. I hope he understands that one thoughtless action can leave wounds on others far longer than a single fall." She bowed her head slightly, then sat down, her hands trembling lightly from the relief of finally voicing what she had held inside for a week. Tyrell sat motionless for a few seconds, as if wrestling with something inside himself, then he slowly stood up. Gone was the arrogance or defiance, the half-smirking smile, the twisted posture of resistance. Here was just a 23-year-old laid bare before justice, his face etched with shame. His voice caught, then he steadied it. "I'm sorry." The courtroom fell dead silent, not because everyone instantly believed him, but because it was the first time they had heard his voice tremble like that. Tyrell turned to Maria. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry to your daughter. I acted like a fool. I thought I was strong because I had people backing me up, but that's not strength, that's just weakness in disguise." He swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling slightly. "I don't want to be that person anymore. I promise I'll make it right." Maria looked at him, her eyes softening, and no one knew if she believed him or not, but the sincerity in his voice was enough to make the entire courtroom exhale in relief. Caprio nodded, as if he had been waiting for this moment, not to hear excuses, but to see if Tyrell truly grasped the root of the issue. He picked up the wooden gavel and set it down with just enough force to end the hearing. "Court is adjourned." The gavel sounded simple but weighty. Time passed, 3 then 6 months later, and the lives of those involved had changed in different ways. Tyrell began his community service program at Amos House, a place that supports the homeless and those in need in the community. From a gang leader used to barking orders on the streets, he now had to wake up early, sweep alleys, rake leaves, collect trash, mop kitchen floors, and serve food to strangers. At first he did it all like a punishment, but gradually he started talking to the elderly, the unemployed, people carrying lives harder than he had ever imagined. There, for the first time, he felt the meaning of serving the community, not to show off strength, but to understand that true strength comes from kindness. During that same period, he took Maria's car to the garage, paid for all repairs, safety checks, oil changes, and even bought her a new set of tires. When returning the car, he bowed his head deeply, an action unimaginable 6 months earlier. The relationship between Tyrell and his grandfather also changed. Thomas Mason, once so disappointed he couldn't look his grandson in the eye, now began to see a small light of hope. He no longer saw Tyrell as a burden or a source of shame, but as a young man trying to fix his mistakes. Many evenings the two sat together on the porch talking about life, about how one wrong choice can lead someone astray and how one right choice can help them find their way back. Maria, after initial weeks of wariness, gradually accepted Tyrell's apology, not just with her ears but with the genuine feeling of a mother. She saw the change in how he spoke, in how he bowed his head when greeting her daughter upon seeing her again, in the gentleness he tried to maintain even as the child remained a bit hesitant. But over time the child's fear faded too. One spring afternoon, when Tyrell brought toys to the community center where the girl attended activities, she no longer hid behind Maria's legs. Instead, she gave a small smile, one tiny but enough to erase the trace of terror from that horrific morning on Elmwood Avenue. And in those moments one could see relief creeping into the hearts of all three, Maria, Tyrell, and even Thomas. No one said it aloud, but they all knew that life sometimes doesn't need a perfect ending. Sometimes just a chance to make amends is enough to change the entire path ahead. And as a local reporter later wrote months afterward, recalling this trial, a gang leader who thought he was untouchable, but before a veteran judge he learned the true meaning of justice. The story of Tyrell Mason, Maria Lopez, and Judge Frank Caprio is not just a courtroom script, it clearly reflects life in the United States today, where issues of privilege, community safety, and personal responsibility are always debated. In a city like Providence, a young gang leader like Tyrell believing that the Reapers own Elmwood and my family will handle everything is not uncommon. In real life, many young Americans grow up feeling backed up, whether by money, status, or connections, and mistakenly think that allows them to overpower others. The scene of Tyrell deliberately forcing Maria's car off the road on Elmwood Avenue, terrifying a single mother and her 6-year-old child, is a powerful reminder that behavior seen as cool on the streets can leave lasting psychological wounds, especially in an American society increasingly concerned about road rage and public aggression. The fact that security cameras captured the entire incident also reflects reality in the U.S. You can always be seen, and objective evidence will speak the truth, overriding denials or excuses. The attitude of grandfather Thomas Mason, a city council member, when standing in court and clearly stating no one is above justice, not even my grandson, is a model that many powerful families in America should reflect on. Love doesn't mean covering up, it means daring to let children and grandchildren face consequences to grow. Finally, Tyrell's journey through community service at Amos House, repairing Maria's car, and gradually changing shows a very American value. The legal system, when applied by people like Caprio, can both protect victims and create opportunities for offenders to reintegrate. The real lesson is, no matter who you are in America, gang leader, politician's grandchild, or ordinary citizen, responsibility to the community, respect for others on the roads, and accountability for your actions are what define you, not the logo on your jacket or the powerful names like Mason, Cole, Johnson, or any others behind you. Thank you for following to the end of the story about Tyrell Mason's journey of justice and change. If you want to see more meaningful real-life stories like this, please subscribe to join us. See you in the next video, where we continue exploring moments that leave the entire courtroom silent.